Welcome to Law Syrup, the show where we talk with special guests about hot topics in Canadian law. This podcast is a co-production with the Ontario Justice Education Network, also known as OJEN. I'm your host, Herman Wong. Let's tap in. Before we begin, please know that this show is not intended to be legal advice or a replacement for a legal representative. Hey everyone, it's great to be back for another episode of Law Syrup. Today, you'll hear my discussion with my friend Dara Khoeum. Dara is a family lawyer, and we met through the Federation of Asian Canadian Lawyers, where we both are on the mentorship committee. Dara is an incredible guy, and I knew I wanted to feature him on the show, especially to talk about his area of practice, how he got into family law, and what he enjoys most about being a family lawyer today. Here's our discussion. All right, so I'm here with Dara right now. I'm so happy that he's here because we've been talking about doing this for a while, so I'm happy that we can find the time to do this. Dara, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm a fan of the show.
Oh, okay,
Um,
thank you.
so I'm very happy that you asked me to join you today.
Well, that's great because I was like, oh, okay, we're friends, from working at the Federation of Asian Canadian Lawyers together. Shout out to FACL.
Yep.
And I was like, wait a minute, Dara does family law. So he'd be perfect for a show for family law. So here you are now, and I'm so happy you said yes. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Okay, so before we get started, how about we tell the listeners about your law school experience? So what was that like for you? Where did you go to school? Tell us all about it.
Sure. So I went to Bond University, which is in Australia. I didn't get any summers off, so it was basically 3 years compressed into two. It was fine. I basically lived in the library for most of my stay there. But when I did have downtime, I was next to a very long strip of beach called Surfer's Paradise. And so the ocean and the beach was incredible. But it was, yeah, I enjoyed my experience. But coming back was a little bit of a challenge because of the whole certificate of qualifications and like doing that rigmarole and then looking for a job after. But overall, I enjoyed my experience at Bond University. And then I ended up doing a Master's of Law at Osgoode anyway. So yeah,
Because you grew up in Toronto, right?
I grew up in Toronto, yes. So born and raised.
Yeah, so now you're back here, you're doing family law. And what kind of drew you to the area of family law? Was it something that you always wanted to do, or was it something where you went to law school, you took a family law course, and you were like, you know what, that seems really interesting, and I want to, explore that area a bit more. So tell us more about that.
Shockingly, I did not take a family law course. So what I learned from family law was from the bar materials initially, and then when I articled, that's where I kind of got my hands wet or my feet wet, I guess, doing family law. And when I got called to the bar, I opened up my own practice
Oh, I
and then
didn't know that.
continued. Yes, I did. I had it for a few years and I was doing civil files, I was doing real estate, and then I was doing family law as well. And so just my experience grew. And then when I closed my firm, I joined a firm that did exclusively family law and real estate. And so it just kept on taking off from there. But I think the point where it solidified for me that I wanted to do family law or continue on doing it was when I had my first family law trial.
Hmm.
And I won. Yay me.
Oh, congratulations.
Thanks. And all issues were live, but the way that the mother, because I represented the mother, the way that she thanked me at the end, with tears, and I think it was very, in that moment, I understood like she had finality that she really wanted for the longest time from her marriage, and she didn't get it until then. And so that's when I was like, okay, I think this is where I belong. This is what I want to do. And so I've been doing it since.
Well, that's amazing. And for the listeners who might not know, we've probably heard about family law, by people talking about divorce lawyers. But what does a family lawyer actually do? Like, are they concentrated in one type of practice, or are there many different things that a family lawyer can do, like child support, spousal support? Talk us through a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, those are definitely issues that are in family law. Family law really is involving the family relationship. So it is about the kids. It also is about child support, spousal support, equalization, um, parenting issues such as decision-making responsibility, formerly, I guess, custody. So we
Yeah,
don't,
because they changed the some of the wording, right?
yeah, so we don't use custody anymore. It's decision-making responsibility. And then we also say parenting time. So that's when how much time the kids are spending with mom and dad, which ultimately will affect who pays who or how much, and how much between mom and dad or the parents. And we can also involve third party to assist us, such as mediators or arbitrators. There's also collaborative family law where lawyers don't go to court and they won't go to court. They will work with other professionals. That's why it's collaborative, working with other professionals to assist the parties in finding a resolution to their matter. And there's been a huge shift towards litigants or spouses to try to resolve out of court to the point that, even in the application itself, when you launch an application, a part of it says that, you will try to resolve family law issues by using out of court dispute resolution options, if it is appropriate for your case, such as mediation. So it's not just about court. A lot of the times we actually do negotiate and try to resolve out of court. It does save money for the clients generally as well.
So you talked a little bit about what drew you to this area of practice. Now, in your day-to-day work right now, what are some of the biggest practice areas that you encounter on a daily basis?
Yeah, so me, it's I hate to say it, but it is really fighting over parenting time.
Hmm.
It is fighting about assets, about selling the matrimonial home, getting certain assets valued, businesses valued.
Hmm.
Um, so we're really looking to figure out, how we can resolve the financial issues simultaneously with the parenting issues. Um, that's kind of like the routine issues, I guess, that I deal with on a regular basis.
So let's take a step back right now and kind of look at family law from a bird's eye view. So, of course, family law might deal with marriages. So, I was wondering in Canada, what is considered a legal marriage?
It is the lawful union of two persons to the exclusion of all others. And in Canada, you'd have to be at least 18 years old to be married without the consent of your parents. But if you're, I guess, 16 to 17, you could get married with written consent of both parents.
I see. So, what's the difference between a marriage and a common law partnership?
Right. So, one of the main issues at the end, if you are a common law, is that you don't have the ability to equalize. So there's equalization. You don't get that as a common law partner in a common law relationship. That's only available to those who are actually married. So when we're talking about equalization, we're talking about the net family property of the husband and wife when we're doing the calculations. And again, it's only for the spouses and not necessarily for common law.
I see. So, there's certain entitlements that a married couple might have that common law partners might not have. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So, if you're in a common law partnership, you can't divorce because it's not considered a legal marriage. But I'm sure that, of course, family lawyers deal a lot with divorce. So I was wondering, how do divorces actually work in Canada or Ontario? Like, how does someone start the proceedings in order to get a divorce?
A divorce is a legal process. You do have to apply for it. And typically, a person would have to wait a year after their separation to apply for the divorce. And it's that in between time of the 1 year that usually spouses are going to seek legal assistance to come to some type of resolution with regards to the financial aspects and the parenting aspect as well.
I see. So When someone comes to you and they want to get a divorce, do they usually have a plan of what they want in mind, or is that the family lawyer's job to kind of figure it out?
It's a mix. Sometimes I do get clients that say that they've spoken to their husband or wife about, what they in principle agree to, but sometimes, given the volatility of the relationship, that has never happened. And so we end up starting from the ground up in terms of what they are seeking, what is in the best interest of the children or child, and what does support look like? What do they need to, carry on, at least for the interim, but we do have like a long-term vision in terms of like what we hope to get for our clients.
Right. So, how did those negotiations kind of work with the other partner's counsel? Like, do you meet via Zoom just to see what each client is amenable to? How do you determine what each person is willing to compromise on?
So I usually like to start off with a call with the opposing counsel or the other side,
Hmm.
to see what their client's position is. Is there any wiggle room? What can we come to a resolution in terms of temporarily while we continue to work things out? So I do like to start off with a call. Well, usually I start off with a letter saying, "Hey, I represent so and so, please provide me with your client's financial statement.
Hmm.
In the interim, I know that little Johnny and Susie have been under the care of both mom and dad, and so we let's figure out a schedule since mom has moved out in terms of sharing time with little Johnny and Susie."
So, when someone tries to get a divorce, do you have to agree with your other partner that they are going to get a divorce? Or can I just say, well, you might not agree to this, but I want to get a divorce?
There's a separation that needs to happen. And that's usually when there is no reasonable prospect of reconciliation between the parties. You can't really separate in silence. There's got to be like one party will have to say, like, I will separate. And if they don't, then we're going to have to look at other factors that would give indication that, there was a separation,
Hmm.
whether they've been holding themselves as a couple or, sorry, they stopped. They stopped having meals together. They stopped doing certain public things out that they normally do. They don't go on vacations anymore. They tell their close families and friends that they've separated, and so there's a lot of factors that we look at. But generally, and most often the time, something did happen, and someone either left or someone saying, "I don't want to be in this relationship anymore."
Hmm.
Sometimes they're still thinking about, and when they want to pull the trigger per se in terms of like ending the relationship, I mean, I have put it in a letter saying that, "Hey, I represent husband or wife and they want to separate from you, and consider this as the day of separation, and so and so is going to be moving out, or so and so is going to be living in the basement." Um, yeah, so we just try to figure out parameters that are respectful for both if possible.
Hmm. And how long does the divorce process usually take?
So let's say if you waited that year and then you applied, you're really in the court's hand. It can be a few months, it could be many, many months. But that's just for you to get your divorce order and divorce certificate.
Yeah, so I guess it depends on how complicated the relationship is, how amicable the separation might be, how willing each partner is willing to compromise, and of course, court timelines and such as well. That will affect how long your divorce process might take. So let's talk about another issue right now, which is the concept of spousal support. So I would presume that that would be related to divorce, but what exactly is spousal support and how is it determined?
Sure. So basically, spousal support is, as it sounds, it's support paid from one spouse to the other. And unlike child support, you'd have to show entitlement to be able to obtain support. The first way is through contractual. Contractual can mean a order or it could be some type of an agreement that says, if our relationship ends, I pay you X amount of dollars for X amount of time, shall we say. It could be compensatory. And so compensatory could be is when, there's been a sacrifice made and The one spouse has suffered an economic disadvantage. A common example of that is when one spouse has given up their career to raise the kids. That would be an example of a compensatory basis. And then on a needs basis is when, for some reason, one spouse doesn't have the skill set. Maybe there's like a disability of some sort and they just can't work and then they need to rely on their spouse. And so that's on a needs basis. And so in the entitlements, there could be one, there could be more. You just have to prove that you are entitled to support before we figure out where you fall in terms of how much or how much one spouse should be paying the other. And we look at a lot of different factors. We look at the age and health of the parties, how long the relationship has been, are there any children involved? So there are many factors that we take into consideration. And when there is spousal support paid on a monthly basis, we would have it in writing and we would say, the payer spouse is going to be able to deduct it, and it becomes income to the recipient spouse.
I see. And how long does spousal support last for, or can it last, I don't know, indefinitely?
Yeah, that's a good question. Depending on the age and the length of the marriage, there is something called the Rule of 65, where if you add the length of the marriage plus the age of the recipient, and if it's more than 65, then the spousal support advisory guidelines can't really give you a determination as to for how long. It just says indefinite. Um, so it's subject to circumstances in terms of when or how much lower one should pay, or if it should stop at all.
You mentioned these spousal support advisory guidelines. I remember learning about this in law school, but for the listeners who don't know, what exactly are they and how do they factor into the determination of spousal support?
Yes, so the spousal support guidelines, it's not law, it's just a guideline that is used by court to figure out uh, the quantum and duration, and it's very case by case specific. And again, you got to make out your entitlement claim before we figure out how much one spouse should be paying the other. And it encompasses looking at some of the factors that I spoke about earlier.
And what about child support? Because that's different from spousal support. So, what are the differences between child support and spousal support?
Child support has the child support guidelines. So it's legislated, it's in there. It says, if you have X amount of children and your income is so and so, this is how much you'll be paying for them on a monthly basis. But rewinding back, remember I was talking to you about, people fighting over parenting time and how
Hmm.
parenting time can affect how much support one pays the other. So if, little Johnny and little Susie are actually spending near equal time between mom and dad, um, the child support would be set off. So let's say we determine that mom's child support is $1,000 and we say dad's child support obligation is $700, then mom would just be paying dad $300 every month.
I see. So there's a lot of math involved, lots of numbers, a lot of considerations in place. Do you have any tools to help you to determine what the actual amount might be? Because I'm assuming that there's so many factors, and there must be something that you might be able to use to assist you with this process.
There's a common software that most of us use. It's DivorceMate. We plug in the numbers, like how many children that they have, how old is the recipient party, how long the marriage was, or how long cohabitation. And then we can even put in other variables such as, Section 7 expenses. We can also calculate, life insurance. It's a very handy tool, and a lot of family law lawyers use it in Ontario.
Right. And I'm assuming that, things like spousal support and child support are probably contested a lot. So when you use something like DivorceMate, is there less of a possibility that the numbers might be contested because it is like quote unquote an objective software? Or do you still see that there are challenges?
Less on the child because it's legislated. It really is like, how it says how much you make and how many kids you have. This is how much you're paying. So that's the easier part. It's the spousal support in terms of it is numbers that we as lawyers can use to kind of negotiate where can we land in terms of, the spouses and what they're willing to pay and what they can pay. And we're looking at their circumstances as well. Yeah.
So let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk a little bit more about your experience working in family law. Based on your experience working with clients, what are some of the biggest misconceptions of what family law is today?
Um, on the client side, I'd say that in terms of separation, a lot of clients think that you have to physically separate to be quote unquote separated, but
Hmm.
you actually can be separated while living under the same roof.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, so the parents, the spouses could be sleeping in different bedrooms, one in the basement or whatever, and they just operate in a way that they're not together. They
Hmm.
don't speak to each other much. They kind of live their own independent lives sometimes. Yeah, so that's one misconception that I run into a lot. Another one is the how immediate divorces can happen. And I think that the general public, or sorry, I don't want to say generalized, but like most of the time, what I do get is, um, I want a divorce right now. They're thinking in their mind that the divorce is the separation combined together, or the divorce uh, ends everything. I mean, it does provide some type of finality, but they don't think about the separation date. They don't think about the gap, the year that they have to wait to apply. But one thing that I wanted to say was I think as family lawyers, I think we're underestimated in terms of maybe the legal profession or maybe the work that we do overall, because I think maybe when someone says you're a family lawyer, all you do is fight over money, assets, and kids. Yes, we do, but I think the missing part is that a lot don't think about how family law intersects with other areas of law as well. So, we are like there's an international component where we're talking about the Hague Convention and like, dealing with a parent who has abducted a child somewhere else in another jurisdiction. We're routinely dealing with pensions. We're dealing with the selling of property. So we're dealing with real estate. We're also dealing with taxation because we're dealing with like disposition costs, and how it affects, one spouse tax wise. So again, family law really hits a lot of other areas of law. Most commonly for me, it's actually the intersection of family and criminal. And many times, mom or dad has criminal charges brought on against the spouse, and that creates further complications in terms of being able to exercise parenting time. Um, so yeah, I think that family law is very cool in the sense that it touches on other areas of law.
So, in your line of work, because you are dealing with cases that are very emotionally charged, how do you keep a balance between, having emotions at work and doing your job as a family lawyer?
Yeah, it was a struggle in the beginning because I kind of personalized it like that their issues became my issues in a sense, in a weird way. But I've learned to kind of cut that cord and like not be, that's their emotion and I need to be the lawyer and I need to advocate and do the best that I can for them. And that means that I have to be objective. I have to not get into their emotions and leave the emotions out of it for me to be able to do the job effectively. And also, I kind of use, if we're talking about emotions, I kind of have figured out a way to transform emotion to kind of fuel me to fight more passionately for my clients. So when, they're in a rough spot, I'm using the emotion of like them being in a rough spot to really fuel me to get them out of that rough situation, whatever that is.
Right. So there is a benefit sometimes to feeling those emotions and letting them kind of influence how you negotiate with the client and how you approach things and make sure that they feel comfortable through the process. So, what else do you do when you have clients who come to you and they're, coming from a relationship that might not have been the best? How do you deal with their emotions and how do you make sure that they feel comfortable with the entire process?
It's definitely a balancing act. You definitely want to show that you are listening, being an active listener. Um, you want to show empathy. You want to show that you can at the same time confidently and are able to handle their matter. You kind of do have to demonstrate a level of confidence to be able to handle their matter because they're going to be entrusting you to advocate for them to resolve their issue. And I think they would like to see that in someone who's going to help them. But I'm also, when I'm meeting the client, and especially whether they're alone or they bring someone with them at a meeting, like I am looking for nonverbal cues as well in terms of like how this relationship is affecting them. And sometimes the person will defer to whoever they brought to do most of the speaking, which I kind of don't like, but it really does tell me that it could be something very triggering if it came out of them. And maybe it gives me insight into like how bad it is for them. But I try to demonstrate active listening, to really ask the important questions, to get to the root of the issues and to see where we can find a resolution.
So, you talked about winning that trial and having this woman come up to you in tears, thanking you for helping her ever achieve some sort of finality. I was curious to know if there were any other rewarding moments that you've had so far as a family lawyer that encourage you to keep on doing what you're doing right now.
You know what? It doesn't even have to be a trial, even if I am successful on a motion, or even if I'm just signing a separation agreement with a client, that already is very satisfying in that, I've helped them conclude this chapter of their life. They may not have gotten everything. They may have gotten most of the things that they want. I don't know, like depends case by case. But um, when we sign and we finish signing that agreement, it's great. It's like now they can move on with their lives. They know how they're going to take care of the kids. They know how much money to expect coming to them or how much they're going to have to pay. So in that aspect, it is rewarding because you have assisted them in closing a chapter of their life and they're able to start a new one.
That's amazing. And I guess my last question for you is, if you look back on your days as a law school student and you were telling him that, oh my gosh, one day I'm going to be a family lawyer, how do you think they would react?
Me, if I went back and told myself if that I was gonna be, I would probably say you're out of your mind. I don't think I would ever do family, but here we are. But I would probably convince myself that hey, the work is worth it. The people you're helping, you're making a huge impact. This is the most sensitive part of their life in terms of like when there is a dissolution of the relationship. They're coming to you at a very vulnerable time, and you can do it. You can help them. Yeah, that's what I would say.
That's amazing. Well, Dara, thank you so much for being here with me today, for joining me on the show. Where can the people find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Dara Khoeum.
Shout out to Dara Khoeum. Anyways, thank you, Dara, for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for tapping into this episode of Law Syrup. On the next episode, we talk to a key part of our audience, students. These are students who were the top 3 winners of OJEN's Social Change Essay Contest from last year. Law Syrup is produced by me, Herman Wong, and the Ontario Justice Education Network. For more information and for accompanying resources, check out ojen.ca and our show notes. See you next time.